Ilya Devlachin, journalist for the Telegram channel We Can Explain. Hello, Ilya.
Yes, Natalia. Hello. Greetings to all the viewers.
Ilya, we're always glad to have you. So, with your simple and straightforward understanding of the deep Russian people, can you explain it to us? Because, yes, somewhere the classic was right. You can't understand Russia with your mind. But nevertheless, between 15 and 24% of Russians support the continuation of military actions. Who are these people? Do they understand that this is a war, or is it just some distant special military operation for them, so to speak? Or are they just making good money off this war? And then there are another two-thirds of respondents who support peace negotiations. And what do peace negotiations mean to them? Because if so-called peace negotiations are happening but the war isn't stopping, then it's basically the same thing. The same percentage is actually for continuing the war. Can you explain this sociology? How does it work?
Well, sociology is pretty complicated, Natalia, but let's start with those who support the war. For the most part, these are viewers of propaganda, people who, for many years, have watched Solovyov, Norkin, Shannon, all of these wonderful guys of ours. And unfortunately, for a large number of these people, nothing really changes much in their worldview, yes. First of all, for them, it's still the same narratives as from the very beginning. If we hadn't attacked, they would have attacked us. It's all the global West. It's all America. Basically, everything they're being sold on TV. And depending on how the party line changes, how the messaging on TV changes, yes, starting with, say, Anchorage, for example, when last year there was this story, The Spirit of Anchorage. Solovyov and other people, or non-people, yes, were saying that there would be agreement soon, very soon, and that America was almost becoming a friend. These people started agreeing with the propaganda in exactly the same way, with whatever point of view it was pushing. In this sense, these people are like, well, I don't know, probably like some kind of mass, like clay, yeah, from which you can mold anything you want. For example, today on TV, they said that global warming exists. They're like, yeah, global warming exists just because they said it on TV. Most of them don't have the internet, and they trust the box. Tomorrow, they'll say that global warming does or doesn't exist. If they say global warming doesn't exist, then that's what it is. In this sense, of course, these are poorly educated people. Most of them don't even have a higher education, and that's why you can mold them into whatever you want. By the way, I don't agree with the opinion that up to a quarter of Russia's population supports the so-called special military operation. No, we don't even see the slightest sign that the percentage is that high. We would estimate it at about 15 to 18%. That's exactly the rural electorate, the electorate without higher education, the electorate that also earns money from the war. You said it right. Yes, these are people who sign contracts and go off to kill, and their relatives. We remember the story about the woman who was given a white lot of Kalina, and she was so happy about it. It was an amazing story. It'll go down in history forever. As for the people who are in favor of peace, that's a pretty complicated story. Because on the one hand, there are people there who are actively against Putin. We would estimate, well, the percentage is about a third. A third of Russians are now actively against Putin, against the war, and so on. And the rest, well, they've always kind of been neither here nor there. Yeah, we're just sitting in our kitchens. This doesn't concern us. We're not into politics and so on. But, well, the situation has turned out in such a way that now it affects them too. Those very same Wildberries sellers, right? This topic has been actively discussed over the past week. Wildberries warehouses are being hit, and goods worth hundreds of millions of rubles have already been destroyed there. And those very people who all these years stayed out of politics, not for or against the war, not for the war, now it has affected them. And in their case, yeah, how could they possibly support the war? Of course, they're not going to go to rallies or actively protest. And even those reels we see on Instagram, yeah, people there are saying, we suffered losses. Our goods worth tens of millions of rubles burned down. They don't say anything about why it burned down or who exactly is the person because of whom their goods were destroyed. But it's clear that deep down they all perfectly understand who that person is and why all of this happened. Yes, they're not ready to talk about it now, openly, publicly, even on Instagram, but deep down they all understand perfectly well. That's why, as Olga Kurnosova said, according to her data, about a third support Putin. And here, by the way, we can refer to VTSIM. VTSIM has a public poll. That is, when a person is given the opportunity to choose for themselves which politician they support. So if we look at VTSIOM's open poll, Putin gets 29% there. In other words, when people are given a choice, who do you support? Less than a third are Russians named Vladimir Putin. And these are very telling numbers. So basically, if people have a choice, they'll say anyone but Putin.
So, in your opinion, what does Putin mean? What solid, I don't know, pillars, yeah, are his beliefs based on that by the end of this year, like, that's it. I swear, that's probably what they're thinking in the Kremlin. They'll capture Donbass. But according to the calculations of the Institute for the Study of War, the deadlines have been postponed 15 times, at least, not to mention that according to the latest assessments by analysts from the Institute for the Study of War, military studies, throughout this year, Ukraine's defense forces have seized the initiative and liberated more territory than the Russian army managed to capture over the same period. Experts are noting a dramatic shift in the dynamics of combat operations compared to previous years. Well, they present a straightforward balance of territories in percentages and square meters across different directions. And there's also an explanation that the Russian army is being depleted, that there's a shortage of reinforcements. We understand that some experts say there won't be any new mobilization, whether repeated, partial, or called something else, before the State Duma elections in order to replenish resources. But still, how do you assess whether people in the Kremlin realize the absurdity of Putin's rhetoric? Who are these people who understand? And why is Putin so confident? In what? And these postponements, are they basically just to keep up morale among Russians for his own electorate? Is that how it sounds?
Well, when it comes to Putin, it's really hard to get inside the head of a sick old man who, it seems, doesn't even understand what he's saying anymore. And lately, Natalia, I get the feeling that even the Kremlin press office is trying to portray Putin as a crazy old grandpa. If we look at the videos released by the Kremlin press office, you can see him mumbling, smacking his lips, swallowing his words. Remember that incident with Zarubin when they sat Zarubin across from him and Putin was reading from a teleprompter, forgetting the names of the towns he had liberated, forgetting even some basic details? He called Kherson region Kyrgyzstan region. The distances he mentioned didn't match up at all. But seriously, what kind of PR person do you have to be to put that out there? I don't think that's proper work for a press office. It feels like they're deliberately making Putin look like he's not all there. But does Putin even realize, well, listen, what else can he even say? What else can he say to the electorate or to Channel 1 viewers besides, we're making active advances, we're moving forward? The reality is that for the Kremlin, only what's on TV actually exists. If they don't talk about it or show it on Channel 1, then as far as the Kremlin is concerned, it doesn't exist. But the problem for Putin and his press office is, for the presidential administration, the problem is that reality is so different from what's shown on TV. It's so out of sync with what Putin says that even, I don't know, some guy like Vanka from Perm can easily tell that something's not right. If there are drones flying over his head, well, listen, if there are drones flying over Muscovites' heads and then crashing into a Wildberries warehouse, but there's nothing about it on Channel 1, then what are people supposed to think? People are supposed to think only what Russian television and Putin consider them to be, idiots. Let's take a look at the Kremlin press office, just their Telegram channel. What has Vladimir Putin been doing for the past week while drones were crashing into Wildberries warehouses? He met with the DPRK's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Cho Son-hui. Who even is that? He approved a list of instructions following a meeting with the government. He held a meeting with Yevgeny Belitsy. He met with the governor of the Jewish Autonomous Region. Blah, 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 meetings, ding, 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 congratulations, and so on. Excuse me, what is this? I mean, just how stupid do the people in the Kremlin and the press office think Russians are to feed them this stuff? How stupid do they think people are? Dmitry Kiselyov, Vladimir Solovyov, I don't know, Popov, and all those Skabivas, that they don't even tell them about this? The problem is, Russians understand everything perfectly well. Russians, if drones are flying overhead and no one tells them anything about it, well, come on, what else can you say? That's why we're seeing support for Vladimir Putin getting lower and lower.
And if those same Russians are paying for VPNs just to get onto those evil Western social networks and talk about what's really happening there, memes, yeah, they even make fun of themselves. Like in St. Petersburg, did they choose a new pope or not after the attack on Wildberries? Because both white and black smoke are coming out. There you go. And of course, they see what's happening right under their noses. Uh,
Natalia, sorry to interrupt. It's not just Russians. I recently saw a hilarious scene on the Solovyov.live channel where the host opens something on his tablet, shows a screenshot of something, and at the top of his iPad it says VPN. This was on the Solovyov.live channel. Vladimir Rudafovich. Oh, wow.
And he even shouts, "What? Did you just wake up? It's war. Did you just notice?" So he's directly telling his own viewers, "Why are you whining? So what if Wildberries is burning? Yeah, it's war. Donate. Tighten your belts." Thank you, Ilya, for joining us and finding the time.
Thank you.